Hello and welcome to this week's sermon, which is for the fourth Sunday of Easter. And the reading for the Gospel for this Sunday is from John chapter 10, verses 1 to 10. Now, two sheep were standing in a field. "Bah!" said one. "Bother!" said the other one. "I was going to say that." Sorry, you'll have to bear with me. We're all sort of locked in at the moment, as you know, and humour gets a bit wangy in such circumstances. Anyway, many types of gates dot around the towns and villages, cities and industries that we see. These gates can give us a lot of information if we pay attention to them and really take notice. Some gates are to keep out people or animals, and some are designed to keep them in. And some are so old that they aren't doing much good anymore. Some gates are welcoming, others formidable. But so much of all this depends on our perspective. If we live in a community that uses gates, we welcome the protection they afford us. But if we're incarcerated, the gates keep us from freedom. If we are small in stature, or very young or very old, even a traditional welcoming white painted picket fence may seem like a terrible threat to us. But if we are spry and in good shape, or have long good legs, leaping over a 3-foot chain link fence doesn't really give us much of a challenge. Sometimes gates are necessary and useful structures. Other times simply they're there for decoration. The word gate is described in the dictionary as a movable structure that controls the entrance and exit. But it doesn't say to what or to where. Today, the writer of the Gospel of St. John offers us the name of the gate to the divine kingdom. Jesus is the name of that gate. One Jesus of Nazareth, Jesus the Christ, God incarnate. And it depends on our perspective whether or not we see this gate as formidable or as welcoming. The writers of the Gospel saw this gate as the only entrance to the kingdom, and the writer of John is no exception. He particularly wants us to see not only that Jesus is the gate, but also that Jesus is the one who will lead us, go before us into the divine kingdom, the Good Shepherd. A shepherd is such a pastoral image. For those early Christians, pastures were relevant, everyday sights, the means of many for keeping their families fed. For many, shepherding was a family tradition. And this allegory was easily understood then, as it is for those who belong to farming families. But gates are still abundant, no matter what type of society it is in which we live. Currently, we're all sheltering inside the gate, cautious to venture into the wider world and afraid of what may lie outside. Gates or doors and the protection they offer are very relevant at this time in our history. Now picture a group of sheep. They are safe in their pen, which they know well, and they're keeping an eye on the only way in and out, the gate. A variety of people have been coming to that gate, and the sheep are all a little wary. They like it best when the shepherd comes. They know the shepherd, and he knows each one of them. He takes them out to places where they can get good pasture and feed safely. When he comes to the gate, they can abandon their watchfulness and just get on with eating, knowing that the shepherd will take care of them. But when other people come to the gate, the sheep are in a quandary. Their instinct is to go out when the gate is open because that's what they've always done. But they remember times when someone who wasn't the shepherd came and led them out, and they couldn't find the pasture and didn't recognize his whistle. And some of them got lost. Ewes remember being separated from their lambs, and they all remember that the flock that made it home was smaller and less secure. When they huddled together at night, they were not so warm and cosy. Some of the sheep are recommending that they don't go out of the gate at all. That way they know that they will be safe. But the other sheep point out that they will also starve to death if they don't go out to pasture. Poor, bewildered sheep. Clearly, this parable is at least partly a riddle. John tells us that its first hearers didn't understand it, and that Jesus had to explain that the point of the parable is not the shepherd, but the gate. A closed gate functions to keep the sheep safely shut in, but the open gate is what the story is primarily about. It is the open gate that allows the shepherd to come in, and it is the open gate that leads to the life-giving pastures. The strangers who confuse the sheep and the thieves who come to kill and rob all help to point to the one sure end. Sheep are always at risk, and they have to learn the value of something more than safety. That something is what Jesus is offering them. The climax of the story is not security, but abundant life. Our gateway to life is made up of the wood of the cross. So in Christ we are indeed offered security, but on such a huge scale that it's almost frightening. What God gives us in Christ is the certainty that we are forgiven people, free to come and go in God's great pasture. For us sheep, that is sometimes rather more than we might want. We might prefer a small mouthful of grass and then a quick scurry back into our reassuringly dull sheepfold. But that is too meagre a gift for God to offer. So, to return to the shepherd and guardian of your souls is to step through the gateway of Christ's cross into an entirely new world, where we are no longer sheep, easily satisfied with small securities, but children of God, free to come and go in God's world. With that freedom comes responsibility and a willingness to abandon our day-to-day security as Jesus did, simply in order to gain the total security of being and doing that for which we were made. Thank you, and keep safe.